I believe most of us need some sense of mastery, of connectedness with other men, of a sense of empowerment that I can get things done and I can do them well and I can prosper and thrive. And the kind of a terminology I like to use is that then makes us the target and the arrow finds us. What's happened nowadays with so many men, not just young men, but older men, is we think, well, how do I get the woman to like me? How do I get the
Yep.
woman to choose me?
Robert, thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the show. And I have followed your work for a number of years, and you're very well known in how do you define the space that you're in? Because I think you're an anomaly in a space full of what I would deem often quite cynical content.
Uh, that's a good place to start. That's a question I've never been quite asked. How do I define the space I'm in? But I actually like
Yeah.
that question a lot. Um, it's a little bit different than the question of when people ask me what I do. And,
Mm.
I say I sell shit on the internet. So maybe that's the space I'm in. I sell shit on the internet.
Don't we all?
But don't we all? Exactly. That's what we all do nowadays. But, my training is in marriage and family therapy. So I was a therapist for about 25 plus years in private practice. Um, I've written 4 books, so I'm an author. Probably my most well known book is No More Mr. Nice Guy. So
Mm.
that gets sold on the internet. I have online courses, I do workshops and seminars, I have an online community for men. Um, and so, really, the space I'm in is really serving men. Um, for probably the last 20 plus years, really since No More Mr. Nice Guy came out,
Mm.
the great majority of my work has been with men around wherever their pain points are: relationship, sexuality, dating, work and career, finances, often wherever they're stuck, underperforming, and looking for answers. And as you know, nowadays, internet and social media and podcasts, there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of it's
Mm.
good, and
Mm.
a lot of it's maybe not so good. But when you're going looking for answers, like you're getting divorced, or you don't know how to talk to women, or you've never had sex in your life,
Mm.
where are you going to go? How do you know what's good information and what's not? So that is challenging. So I think probably everybody thinks they put out good information. I think I do as well. I keep growing. I'm in a path of working on myself and growing, evolving. I have been for 30 plus years, and I assume I'll be doing that till I die. Kind of like, going to the gym. I assume I'll keep going to the gym until I die. It's just one of those things you just keep
Understood.
at it. You keep up with it. So again, my primary thrust is working with men, often around relationship dynamics, whether it be relationship struggles, breakup, divorce, getting into relationship, dating, sexuality. And my main kind of underlying theme is that we men do our best when connected with other men.
I completely in terms of up leveling your game and not game, but up leveling yourself. The only way and your relationships, the only way is through your awareness and your consciousness to be aware of things that have been holding you back, obviously in the past, and creating a new form of yourself in that bandwidth that attracts new situations into your life, which are different, learnt from the old, but are completely new. And I find a lot of people in the space, and we can go into this because I briefly touched upon it before we started recording, but a lot of it is still polarity. So it's still very much the us and them. Okay, I've been hurt, or I've learned this about women, or I've learned this about men.
Yeah.
So I'm going to learn what they respond to, and it's still a push pull dynamic, and that's never going to give you what you're actually truly seeking, which is deep connection, love, open heartedness, vulnerability, all these things that most men in that space are not going to admit because they've been wounded. And I think as men, we can all understand because we are by nature the romantics. Well, I feel that way with a lot of men. It's women, just by virtue of having to give birth, are a bit more mercenary because they've got to make the children survive. So they need to cut a bit of that romanticism off, whereas men can just be. Who writes all the romantic poetry for the most part? It's all men.
Yeah, it does
Well,
tend to
and
be that way. Yeah.
and we are, and I'm speaking from experience that once you go through a significant heartbreak, that sort of burns away like mist on the morning grass to a degree.
Well, so there's a lot of pieces here. Even
Yeah,
just that
sorry.
little right,
Yeah, I throw
there's
you.
a.
I
But
throw you.
let's pull apart some of the pieces. At least from my perspective of how I see things. Yeah, we crave connection. That probably is one of the deepest human needs. Without connection, we die. You put people in
Yeah,
solitary confinement, they go crazy, they go insane, they die. We don't thrive, we don't function. As we look at what's now being called an epidemic of male isolation
mm,
nowadays, um, I mean, there's study after study after study of just people that are isolated, and so referencing like the male isolation thing, um, get into bad habits, deeper into addiction, depression, suicide, early death. An early death that's not very pretty. So we are wired to need connection. Again, when I said for 1.5 million years, we were tribal, we were communal, we knew everybody. We didn't have to learn any new names in our lifetime. We knew our tribe, we knew the people in it, and everything was shared. And I think, oh, you've got a dog as well.
yeah.
My my
I can
my
hear
dog.
yours.
She's been
Where is
outside
she?
barking a little bit too. But yeah.
Yeah, mine's been unusually quiet, which makes me worried. So I'm glad she
Okay.
barked. Yeah,
Nala is lying right out. I've got French doors on my office. She's lying right outside the
yeah,
door, but she's unusual. Well, not a. She's more than normal wound up about the birds out back that
yeah.
they
So
make
that's what
it.
she's barking at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the birds because there's certain bird that makes a certain sound sometimes comes and steals her dog food. So
all right.
she
That's
when she
clever.
hears them, she's got to go get wound up. But also there might be a cat, which one anyway. So
It's
your dog will bark, my dog will bark some.
That's good.
We'll
That's
let them
great.
bark.
Yeah.
They're lovely
They're
creatures.
living their lives.
Yeah,
I'm happy to
yeah,
let them bark.
authentically, they're doing
Yeah,
what they're
it's
wired to
very
do.
very authentically. Perhaps a little
So
bit too authentically.
so we're talking about connection, and maybe even dogs are a good part of that because even I'm not an expert on the subject other than, I love my dog dearly, is that, you know, dogs have evolved along with humans, and there's theories out there. I mean, there's a lot of theories about why humans have evolved the way we have. One of the theories is the friction between our need for connection and our drive for autonomy of a separate self. We
Mm,
need connection. That's powerful. But we also have this desire to do it our way. And they say that friction, anytime you have, friction or things pushing and pulling, there's usually growth. So we've had part of our evolution attributed to that. I've read more than once that some people attribute it to our great ape ancestors discovering hallucinogenic
mhm. Yeah,
fungus.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Stoned
so
ape theory.
it's stoned ape theory, and another theory I've heard is our evolution alongside of dogs. The dogs have helped us survive and thrive as we've helped them survive and thrive. So they're a very important part of our human evolution
Yeah,
and advancement. So anyway, that's a whole nother subject, but it all does come back into connection. Dogs are pack animals. They thrive in that connection. We're pack animals. We thrive in that connection. And nowadays you see so many men kind of with this lone wolf mentality, go it alone, mainly because they've maybe never been initiated into the masculine tribe. Maybe they grew up without father figures, without men they could trust and
yeah.
get close to and feel
I've seen a
safe
lot of
with.
that. Yeah.
They get into school systems that are pretty much geared to help girls thrive and
Mm,
succeed, not to help boys thrive and succeed. And now with Gen Z, they grow up with a cell phone in their hand with everything being pushed to them, whether it's entertainment, Nickelodeon, Netflix, pornography, social media. You can order your food on Uber Eats and get it delivered to you. Everything's pushed to you. And what's happening is that seems to be isolating humans, but especially young men more and more. We have this illusion of a connection through social media,
yeah.
but we don't tend to. Now, so what's happening is also because boys are not being initiated into the world of the masculine, and we can get into masculine and
Mm,
female roles and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of, well, you're a guy therefore you should, you're a woman
yeah,
therefore
yeah.
you should.
No, there's many variations.
Yeah, gender does have fluidity to it, but do tend to be fairly
Yes.
consistent, distinct differences between men and women. I think we can all see that. You take a
Yeah.
bell curve of men, that you got it certain, but you have outliers. Bell curve of women, most fall inside the bell curve, but you also have outliers on the two fringes. That's always going to happen.
Mm.
But as men, I believe most of us need some sense of mastery, of connectedness with other men, of a sense of empowerment that I can get things done and I can do them well and I can prosper and thrive. And the kind of a terminology I like to use is that then makes us the target and the arrow finds us. What's happened nowadays with so many men, not just young men, but older men, is we think, well, how do I get the woman to like me? How do I get
Yeah.
the woman to choose me? I've got, whether if you believe you have to be an alpha male, whether it's just red pill, black pill, well, I have to have status, looks, money. I got to have this, got to have that. How do I get the women to like me? And of course, I want the hottest, youngest, sexiest women, the OnlyFans women and, the ones I see on TikTok and,
Yeah.
Instagram and all the Instagram models. And,
Can I just caveat, Robert? I don't
jump
want
in
those
anytime.
girls. No, I was just they're not the girls I'm looking at. I don't want the OnlyFans girls on TikTok.
But
There's nothing more of a turn off than me than some you open their socials and they're showing their ass. It's just like, oh my
but
god.
but but here's the deal though, is that attraction. I know we're bouncing around a lot, but that's okay.
We are. That's
Well,
okay.
we'll keep pulling this stuff back
Yeah,
together.
we'll pull it together.
We'll pull it together.
Yeah,
I've done this before. We'll pull it
yeah.
together.
I trust you.
Attraction has many levels to it, many layers to it. Of course, part of it is physical for men and women both.
Mm.
Part of it is physical. Women do tend to be attracted to certain physical features in general, and we men tend to be attracted to certain physical features. Certain symmetry of body, certain pleasantness of face. Age even, for us men is more important than it is for women in terms of what they're attracted to. So that's pretty consistent. So what happens is not only is that attraction is kind of wired into us for the survival of the species, we take what might be a natural attraction and turn it into a fetish. I mean, we pretty much all do it. Men do it a lot, and we can do it with pornography. We can do it with TikTok, OnlyFans. We're like, I only like blondes that look like this, or I only like shaved Asians, or I only like this kind of fit. And you can go find that everywhere,
Yeah.
and you become addicted to your fetish, where that is all that turns you on and arouses you. And all the other varieties and flavors out there, you don't even notice and they don't interest you. And then you go, well, but I can't get that flavor I want. What's wrong with me? Oh, it's because fill in the blank. It's their fault. They're doing this thing. And women are doing that to men as well. Well, even hashtag Me Too was part of that. Men are all this. Men do this. We're all victims. No, you're not.
No one's a
Most
victim.
of us all are kind of playing this game together, but
Yeah.
we're doing it clumsily. Here's the thing. I spoke at a retreat, a camp actually, last summer, and it was up in the redwoods of California. It's called Camp Abundant, and they call it a camp for entrepreneurs slash and a music festival. And I spoke to the group of men and women of all ages there, so a few hundred people, and I asked everybody, okay, raise your hand if any of these apply to you. And it's men and women sitting together, and I asked, how many of you have ever been hurt in a relationship? How many of you ever been ghosted? How many of you ever been lied to? How many of you ever been left without a good explanation? How many of you ever been cheated on? How many of you have ever, had a person accuse you of something you haven't done? How many, and all the hands are going up, men and women. And then I said, okay, how many of you have ever left a partner without a good explanation? How many of you have ever ghosted somebody else? How many of you ever lied about your intention or withheld information? How many of you have ever had secrets from a partner? How many of you have ever cheated on a partner? And, hands are going up and everybody's going to look around and going, okay, we're all clumsy lovers. We're all really bad at this because it's not in our human DNA to do all this pair bonded, find the ideal partner of the opposite sex, whatever the opposite sex is for you, right? How do we find that ideal person, have this magical relationship in the love songs and the poetry and all that? And how do we live with each other, coexist with each other, and keep liking each other over time when we're very different creatures as men and women, where we see the world differently, we see relationship differently, And it's not even in our human DNA to try to do this. And so it doesn't work well. We're clumsy at it. Men and women both are clumsy at it. So what becomes the easy answer is for the people in this camp to say it's the people in this camp's fault. So
Yeah.
whether that's the men saying it's the women's fault or the women saying it's the man's fault,
Yeah.
all men are like this, all women are like that. So it doesn't matter if the men are all claiming, all the women are hypergamous, or they only want the sex, they only want the status, looks, and money, or the women are all saying, oh, the guys are also shallow, they just want to manipulate and play games to, have sex, and then they dump you and leave you. They're always trading down for the next youngest whatever. We're all focusing, well, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. And when I was doing that at that camp, that everybody's looking at each other. Then I had them pair up, men and women in a pair with people they didn't know. Give some you don't know, and talk about how you've been hurt and how you've hurt somebody else. Men and women talking to each other about that. And you know what? People were out there sobbing and
Yeah.
crying and giving each other hugs because for the first time we realized, oh, you're not scum, or you're not a gold digging bitch. You're human. You've been hurt. You've been wounded. You just wanted to
Mm.
be loved, and you just wanted to love, and it didn't go the way you thought it would. And now, of course, it hurt. So you got bitter. And now we can find everything on the internet to support that bitterness and
Yeah.
say it's their fault. It's their fault. Again, that's not serving us because at the bottom of all that, we still crave connection. We still want to feel lovable. We want to be loved, and we want to love. Those are the deepest human desires. And unfortunately, our romanticism says, well, you'll get that by falling in love with some perfect person that will make you happy and fulfill you. It doesn't work that way. That does just lead to messes. It leads to heartbreak. It leads to loss. It leads to lying, to deception, to things crashing and burning and not going well. And so we do have to rework how we go about getting this connection and get realistic about where we're going to find it and where we're not going to find it. So, did I pull some of those things together?
No, you just
Uh,
surmised perfectly why I love your work, because you've just gone in depth and given a nuanced and beautiful and answer with a way to move forward for people, as opposed to what you described of just blaming the other party and trying to them outgame that other party whilst
outgame them. Yeah.
keeping your heart
Weaponizing,
closed.
and this is kind of what I call it. Like maybe there's certain groups on the internet, say certain groups of men, take evolutionary, psychology and then
Yeah.
weaponize that
Yeah.
against women. And then, if you're on social media at all, I'm not, um, you know, everybody's ex, everybody that's on social media, if they have an ex, their ex was either a borderline,
Oh
a
yeah.
sociopath, or a
Yeah,
narcissist.
the guys are narcissists. The girls are all solipsistic or have a personality disorder.
Yeah,
No, no, maybe you
everybody's
two
a
together. Yeah,
everybody's
yeah.
a
Everyone's a
diagnostician
psychic.
nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, maybe you two just didn't work your shit out together, and you're both flawed human beings. Like
yeah, you're
yeah. Stop
just
pointing a
you're
finger.
wounded people just trying to find
But you're not
love,
going to
but you don't know
learn.
how to do it.
But equally with that attitude, you're just going to repeat that same pattern
I've done
100%
that. I've
until,
done it.
yeah. Oh, we've all done it for sure, and it takes a lot of, I'm a very slow learner, but like as you said at the start, until you actually increase your awareness, those patterns will repeat. I just want to circle back very quickly, because I sort of cover a lot of topics on this podcast. So if people haven't heard, you said sort of red pill, black pill, manosphere, and all these phrases that some people may not be
Well,
acquainted.
throw incels, throw MGTOW. There's
Men,
a lot that we can throw in there.
men go their own way. So I'm just talking obviously about the male side of this equation. I think a lot of guys, when they have a breakup or they're going through trouble with women, will find these things online, and some of it I think is very, very, very useful. Like just in terms of, and this might be a good launching pad to quickly cover the nice guy syndrome and how I see that, the problem with being weak ostensibly and being a weak man. And that's not a judgment. Like I think all men have been there at some point in their lives until they realize it. But so guys would find these sites, they'll learn about evolutionary biology, they'll learn, okay, I need to learn some game and all of these things. And look, that, and the good ones will tell you you need to focus on yourself and up level yourself,
Hmm.
and fantastic advice. Like that's just ostensibly across the board good advice. The
And,
problem,
and even though going
yeah,
to the gym, getting in shape, and taking cold showers are helpful, that is not sufficient enough to actually make you the kind of person
no,
that's going to attract what you want in life in terms of relationship. I
no,
do
no,
value those things, but
yeah,
they're
yeah.
not enough.
No, well, you're still coming, and this is probably, I don't want to go too far off topic, but you're still coming from a place of lack with that's what
Yeah.
that's never addressed. But so they'll find these guys, they'll talk about this, they'll learn a bit, but then I see a lot of these men who run these huge platforms, and I don't want to be. I think they're trying to do the best with the awareness they have. But from my point of view, they seem to be very hurt. They've gone through a couple of bad divorces. They've had everything taken from them. And now they've just gone, right, a part of their heart is shut down. And then they'll say such things as a woman is just a compliment to your life. If she's not a compliment, get rid of her. All of these. And it's just like, dude, what part of your soul is shut down to where you're so now closed to the possibility of actually deeply falling in love? And look, I get it, that kind of wound and trauma is severe unless you do a lot of work and introspection rather than, but the way I see it, rather than doing that work, they've sort of gone to how can I now outgame or out compete the opposite sex
Right.
to get what I want. And it just sounds, and look, I don't know what they're, I would suspect potentially in their private lives they're not actually behaving in that way with their girlfriends. I would say they're probably a lot more vulnerable and a lot more open. Uh,
Well, it is interesting. I've spoken at Red Pill events. I spoke at one, a few years ago, and was treated really well and really enjoyed it. And probably about 250 men there.
mm,
And I began my presentation by saying this used to be a pickup conference that kind of evolved into Red Pill. And I said, I don't identify as pickup. I don't identify as red pill. But I said, I am a man and I love there's a group of men here wanting to level up and be good men. And I asked how many people had read my book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And probably about three-quarters of the people in the audience
mm,
raised their hand. And I made the comment, I just said, I don't know if No More Mr. Nice Guy is the gateway drug to red pill or if red pill is the
red
gateway
pills.
drug to No
I
More
think it's,
Mr. Nice Guy.
yeah,
And even,
the latter.
they told me at that time that their Reddit thread for red pill thread for men in relationship, my books required reading. Somebody just told me the other day they came across No More Mr. Nice Guy through Red Pill Reddit. So, and I remember, flying to that event, reading Rollo Tomasi's Rational Male, going, yeah, I agree
Mm,
with that. Yeah, that's
mm,
true. Yeah, I got no conflict with that. But the two things I do have conflict with is really what you've mentioned and what I call weaponizing information against women to protect
mm,
ourselves. Oh, it's
yeah.
their fault. They're out to do this to us. We have to protect ourselves. The other thing I don't like is creating a hierarchy of men, red pill, blue
Mm,
pill. Oh, we're alpha. You're average
you're beta.
frustrated chump. I
Yeah.
don't like men, doing that to each other. I don't think it serves us as a tribe. And it's usually just a false ego and arrogance that says, "Oh,
Mm,
I'm red pill. You're blue pill. You're just going to get done to by women over and over and over again." But you're right. Deep inside, as I said, I think our deepest desire is to connect, to feel lovable, to love and be loved, and that is such a deep drive for us. But here's the deal: I've been saying for a while that we're here to get our hearts broken. I
mm.
think that's
It's the
what human existence
greatest
is.
lessons.
We're
Yeah.
here to get our hearts broken. I mean, my dog Nala's right outside my window. She's usually sitting here with me, but we've had her 5 years. You got your dog. You love the dog. I
Oh
just
my
got
God.
off a
Yeah.
call with another guy that works with PTSD with vets and uses plant medicine with them. And he said he was late for the call because he had to take his dog to the vet. It's 14 years old, and he has two
Oh,
pit bulls. So
yeah.
and I know if Nala, my dog, dies before I do, it's going to break my heart. I'm
Mm,
going to be devastated. Every day I get down on the floor, tell her how much I love her. I roll around with her. I take her for a walk. I tussle with her. I give her my love. Because one day it's not going to be there. Or one day I'm going to break her heart. Dr. David Snarch wrote in a book called Passionate Marriage, in every relationship, somebody's going to get left.
mm,
That's actually the
mm,
Buddhist theory of impermanence.
Yeah.
Nothing lasts forever. My very good friend, my coworker at Integration Nation, my men's program, he lives in Pune, India. And he was on a 21-day silent retreat. Should still be on a 21-day silent retreat. I got a message from him Sunday. He said, my mother died. So he's on retreat. And he goes, Robert, he says, you know how surreal it is to be spending the last 2 weeks meditating on impermanence and get a message that
And
your
have to
mother
face it.
died?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then face it. It's the reality. Everything's impermanent. Everything manifests, unmanifests, comes and it goes. But here's the deal. I mean, just think about the mathematics of this logic. Anything that is good enough to break our hearts is too good to not to want to miss out on it. Which means the best stuff's gonna hurt us. The good stuff hurts because it all goes away. Either we're gonna leave it, it's gonna leave us. Whether it's your dog, I mean, if something happened to my wife, I'm gonna be devastated. My mother's 90, and I know she's gonna die in the near future. I'm going to shed a few tears, right?
Mm.
So it doesn't matter if it's your favorite car, doesn't matter if it's your favorite TV show that gets canceled or your favorite dish in the restaurant that they quit serving. We're going to deal with heartbreak and loss. It is the nature of existence, and even a number of animals experience that. That their flock,
Oh
they're
yeah.
emotional animals.
Yeah, yeah.
Dogs grieve. If a companion dies.
Mm.
And there's a few animals that
Do
do
you,
that.
on that, do you know one of the guy who rescued all these elephants in Africa? He protected all these elephants from poaching, and he bought a lot of land and put them into this huge sanctuary. And that he died living on this
Oh
sanctuary in
my,
Africa.
oh my.
And this huge amount of it's on. I'll find it on YouTube and send it to you. But all these elephants that he'd rescued knew that he had died, and they do a mourning ceremony, and they came the morning of his death and stayed for about a week doing their mourning
Yeah.
ceremony. So there's just that interconnectedness, and I'm getting chills even thinking
I,
about
I,
it.
I'm 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 kind of tearing
Extraordinary.
up because I'm thinking
Yeah,
I want to be an elephant, and when I know it's time for me to die, I
you
want
just
to do
walk
whatever
away.
trek I need to do to
Yeah.
go to my place of death.
Well,
So
that's what they
anyway,
used to do in indigenous cultures here, because it was hunter and gatherer. You couldn't come along once you became a burden to the tribe in terms of speed and so on.
Hmm.
And look, I'm very uncomfortable speaking about indigenous culture in Australia. There's many different variations, and
Yeah,
I remember watching something on one particular tribe here, and it was basically a death dance. You'd have a dance. They'd celebrate your life, and then you'd happily walk out into the desert, find your spot, and pass. I mean, what
yeah,
more beautiful way than the majority of people here who die? They actually faint at the moment of death because they're that afraid of death, because they've
yeah,
done no work on preparing for it. So yeah,
yeah. And this all gets back down to who are we at
yeah,
our core? We crave that connection. We realize death is a reality, and in more primitive cultures, it's real. It's accepted. We don't hide from it. And now we're hiding from death. We're we're we're
hiding from
hiding from
being hurt.
love. We're
Yeah,
hiding
we're
from
hiding
being
from being
hurt.
hurt. Yeah.
And so the thing is, I somehow I stumbled across a YouTube video. It was just a few weeks ago, and I don't know quite how I bumped into it, but I think it had like 6 views. I mean, it hadn't been very viewed, and it was a young
It's
woman.
probably one of mine. Probably.
One of your podcasts. It was
I'm just
actually
kidding.
a young woman talking, and it just had kind of a visualizer. It didn't actually have her show her face, but she was talking, and I really had empathy for the things she was saying. She said, she was a young woman. I don't know how old. I'm going to guess early 20s, and she said, I know I'm immature sexually. I know I've got, sexual hangups. I want to mature sexually. I want to develop as a sexual person. She said, I want to have sexual experiences. I don't need to, have someone commit to me for life for me to have sex. I want to be able to experience various sexual experiences. And she said, I can't, she says, I can't seem to meet a man that will just show up in that same kind of way. They said they want to play games, they want to do tricks, they want to manipulate. And I'm telling them, I just want to have sex. And they're still running all the game that they learned on the internet. Like, well, you got to do this to get a woman, and you got to do that, and you got to keep them like that, and you can't let them in, and you got to do that. And there's just, and I'm thinking, here's a young woman saying, I just want to have some sexual experiences. But then I know that red pill will even take that. Well, that's just going to be high body count. She's not a high value woman, blah, blah,
Mm.
all the noise that we make about that. And so, well, that is made about it. So what's happening is because we've been hurt and we've all put our guards up. Something I've been saying for a little while now is that most people will choose their defense mechanisms and their neuroses over love.
Mm.
I'm a
Yeah.
marriage therapist by training. I've seen relationships. I've been in relationships. I was trying to love my partner from the depth of my being, and they're going like this. No, not going to let you. No, my heels are dug in. No, whatever their way. And I've been with enough different partners that had their own unique ways, their own neuroses, their own defense mechanisms. We've all got them.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we're not particularly aware of them.
Mm.
Carl Jung said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule our life, and we'll call it fate. So
Yeah.
here we are going, why can't I get love? Everybody's playing games. Everybody's hurting me. Everybody's doing that. Everybody else but me, of course. Everybody's doing it. The truth is, we're all just protecting ourselves from getting hurt because we've all been hurt and we're all going to get hurt again. And so we're going, no, I want to get I want to extract this thing from relationship without having to open up and risk getting hurt. And the thing is, to have the goodies, to get the good stuff, we got to
Mm.
open up and know at some point it probably is going to go away. And it's going to go away when we least expect it, not because somebody's playing a game or trying to hurt us. People die, things change, impermanence. Everybody's going to get left.